Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking through advice from alumni who have graduated from the School of Management and Labor Relations. Tonight with us, we have Jason Rizzoli, Liz Colocho, Eric Wadicki, and Sweta Patel. Each of them is going to take a moment and just introduce themselves. So Liz, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So once again, this is Liz Colocho. I graduated with my master's in human resource management in 2020. I have been in the HR world since I started my career. Graduated from business school from Rutgers as well back in 2013. I joined the workforce within talent acquisition and then transitioned my career up to being an HR business partner now. So currently right now, I'm still in New Jersey, here in the Woodbridge area. I am working as an HR business partner for a biotech that specializes in rare disease research, development, and sales. So love what I do, and really happy to be here and talking to y'all.
Thank you. Eric?
Hey everyone, my name is Eric Wadicki. I am graduated from with a bachelor's in human resource management in 2016. Coming up on about 8 years in human resource, always typically being in a generalist or business partner type function throughout my career. Currently working out of Burlington, Vermont, but splitting my time between here and half of my time in the New Jersey, Jersey Shore area. Our organization's headquartered out of New York. My current role, I'm a vice president, talent business partner for Marina Mar Communications. So we focus and specialize in pharmaceutical and healthcare communications. In my role, I'm responsible for the full employee life cycle, everything from onboarding, benefits, payroll, L&D, employee relations, immigration, separations, everything. I'm excited to talk to you all tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sweta?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sweta Patel. I graduated from Rutgers back in 2017 with a double major in HR and public health. After graduating from Rutgers, I went on to do a leadership development program at Nielsen, which was a 2-year program where I did 4 roles across talent acquisition, people analytics, as an HR business partner. I did mergers and acquisitions, compensation, you name it. After that, went on to become an HR business partner. After leaving Nielsen, I have joined now Thomson Reuters, where I'm a remote employee based out of Denver, Colorado. With them, I'm focused on 2 things, specifically our AI strategy. So thinking about how we leverage AI internally and the change management required for that, and transforming our organization to become a skills-first organization. So moving away from focusing on jobs and tenure and pedigree and focusing more on the skills that employees and candidates have. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Jason?
Evening, everyone, and thanks for joining. Jason Rizzoli. I did my bachelor's at the other RU down the street from Rutgers. So my bachelor's in HR management, organizational behavior. And then I did my master's in labor and employment relations at the real RU, as you guys know it, up the street in New Brunswick. So quite some time ago. And since then, I got into HR after doing some internships and a little bit of contract work. I got in through talent acquisition on a contract role in telecom. Moved my way over to Sears Retail as an HR business partner, and then moved into food distribution area as a vice president of HR, and then moved back into Sears, back into the retail services industry, and then worked my way all the way up to second in command HR at Sears in my roles. And then since then, I have left Sears last year. I've been joined a couple companies as an advisor, a telehealth medicine company called AirVet. I also do an AI company called Reflow. And then I also been working and consulting with some smaller firms, some startups and so forth as well, while still looking for maybe my next gig. So welcome very much. Enjoying to be here tonight. Help you guys out.
Thank you all. So to kick us off, Sweta and Eric, would you like to answer what were some of the challenges you faced when transitioning from being a college student to an employee at your first job? Eric, you want to start?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. So I think for me, some of the biggest challenges that I faced, I think may align more with personal changes than necessarily just being in the new professional setting. I know for me, one of the big things was just getting used to that sort of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday routine. I think you have a very different lifestyle when you're in college and in undergrad or postgrad even. Your schedule's a bit more flexible. Your classes might not start until 10, 11, 12 in the afternoon in any given day. And making that big transition to being in the office every day at 9 a.m. or earlier is a big lifestyle change. It's a new chapter. It's something that you're going to get comfortable with pretty quickly, but definitely takes a little bit of time to get used to, or at least it did for me. I think additionally on that front with the lifestyle considerations, a big adjustment for me is that I started to commute into New York from New Brunswick every day. Those of you that have done it know that that is quite the distance every day. I mean, it's about an hour and a half each direction, really cuts into your time. So managing your time outside of work is just as important as managing your time actually spent in the office. And I know additionally, kind of being in those entry-level roles, making sure that I was conscious about budgeting and meal prep and things of that nature to make sure I was well prepared for being in the office. But it was definitely a big transitional period for me, kind of moving into that lifestyle.
Great, thanks. Sveta?
Yeah, I've got a few things. So what Eric said definitely resonated. I'll say this as a first gen American, essentially, having to navigate, learning to navigate things like insurance and financial planning, etc., with parents that don't speak the language was incredibly difficult. So looking to seek out support for that and just trying to navigate that space, it was really challenging and it was really scary to be, if I'm being completely honest. So that was a big shift in mindset. I would say, when you're in university, right, you've got semesters, you've got projects that have a start and an end date, you've got classes that have a start and an end date, and then you move into your first job where you may have projects that don't have an end date yet, or you've got responsibilities where it's just kind of ongoing. So that structure and rigor that you might have been used to is no longer in existence. And lastly, I would say specifically for HR professionals or folks going into that space after graduating, you tend to talk to folks that are significantly more your senior in some instances, right? Your projects, your day-to-day context go from being folks your own age at school to now you're talking regularly to folks that are in different life stages than you, right? People that are married and have kids, or people that have grandkids and have had these different life experiences that you may not be able to quite empathize with just yet. And learning to communicate with folks on a regular basis with those differences can be quite a shift.
Great, that's very helpful advice. Okay, Jason and Liz, is there anything that you wish someone has advised you on, or someone had advised you on when beginning your first postgraduate journey? So Jason, I know this is going to be a little bit of a stretch for you in terms of remembering, but I guess you could advise too in terms of like what you would recommend, that you tend to advise students when you come to events. And then Liz, if you could think back for you, what was most helpful that you wish that someone had told you when you first started, that would be great. I don't know, Liz, do you want to kick it off?
Yes, I mean, I have to remember back, right? At least my bachelor's. I think one of the biggest learnings that I've had within my career has been the networking part. I commuted, I worked almost 2 jobs trying to put myself through college. So I unfortunately didn't have time to do the extracurricular items within college, as well as, make too many friends, unfortunately, within my bachelor's. I did make some really great connections that I still have, but I think where I missed that opportunity was how important networking is. So once I transitioned over to a more corporate role, I just put my head down, focus on the work and getting things done. And mind you, that will get you where you need to go so far. But you also need to understand that networking is very important. Even if it's just creating, friendships or I would say relationships, professional relationships within your own peers, as well as, getting a mentor, getting advocates within your own organization or just mentors outside of your own organization is very, very important to have. And like I said, I learned that very quickly after one of the organizations didn't work out for me because I was not making those connections. Somebody who is making those connections is going to be seen, or they're going to be thought of for projects first before, unfortunately, you are. So that's what I learned in one of the organizations that I worked for. And then once I moved over to a new organization, which is actually, it helped out because it was smaller. I was able to raise my hand, create those connections. And I'm not saying, be unauthentic, be yourself. But just please, make sure that you're actually making that effort.
Great. And just to chime in on what you were saying, for those of you students that might be on the call and working and you feel like you're not able to network, one of the ways that we can support you within the career services team of the School of Management and Labor Relations is we can show you how to reach out to alumni by utilizing LinkedIn. So even if you are doing like 1 to 2 outreaches and doing what's known as an informational interview, you are you're setting up a time to talk with someone for 10 minutes on Zoom or over the phone, just to learn a little bit about their career. Listening to a panel like this, hearing what these 4 professionals are doing with their job. It could just be 1 to 2 people that you're able to connect with to slowly build your network. I just want to encourage you that we're here to support you. And that's why we do all of these events, to help you build a network. And just by being here tonight, you've already made 4 networking connections. And I know Eric this week, thank you, because Eric was doing a different event with me earlier this week, and he was already connecting with students on LinkedIn right after. So it really does make a difference when you go to events like this, to even if this is the only thing you do all year, or in the next 2 years while you're at Rutgers, you make these connections. So not to cut into what you want to say, Jason, but I just wanted to add into that.
No, I appreciate you putting the plug in for the Alumni Association. And yeah, we have coffee chats that we just started up. So join the LinkedIn page and then sign up to do a coffee chat. You can do it in person or virtual. So that was just posted. I love being on here. So I look at every day as an opportunity to learn. And yeah, I've been in the game for a while, right? But even today, I never would have thought like some of the things that Sweta would have had to go through. It's just like boom, duh. It's awesome because I didn't have that issue. But it's things that you learn of other people. So advice that I wish I had when I was first starting out my career. I would say honestly, it's really what Liz said, is making those networking connections. So the other thing I would actually say is something that's kind of like, it was a big no-no back in the day, but be open to switching jobs, right? Especially in HR. Most of us do get into the field either through some sort of internship, contract work, talent acquisition area. But the big thing when I started was that you want to get into a company, you want to be there for like your career. And I know that's not necessarily the norm so much anymore, but it was always considered like a bad thing to go from company to company. And I'm not saying to do it once a year or anything, but every couple of years, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Every 3 to 4 years to see, is there an upper opportunity that might be a good suit for me, because that will again help you network and get opportunities for growth and different experiences. And as you want to round out your career later on, it's not just experiences within one industry or one company that'll make you a well-rounded HR individual. It's experiences outside. So it is fine to stay within one company from a career perspective, but definitely make sure you're making those connections then with people in other areas, in other areas of HR, in other industries that HR supports. So that way you can get that exposure. So again, go back to Liz's point, I think, my failure to network, and granted, when I started, there wasn't as many social outlets. There wasn't, there was SHRM, right? In essence, there was a couple of professional associations. Now there's a breadth of stuff. Rutgers had nowhere near the depth of career services that they have now. So take advantage of those things, like Jacqueline said, because those are that'll significantly put you ahead of others.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, my mouse got hit. So maybe Eric, since we've been talking about networking already, can you share a networking success story that significantly impacted your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what Liz and Jason kind of both mentioned. Liz focusing on the importance of connections. I can tell you right now, I have had a Rutgers HR connection at every single organization I've been a part of. All four organizations I've worked at have had a Rutgers HR connection in one way or another. Speaking of successful stories, my very first HR internship, I was connected to somebody, a bartender on Easton Avenue, a friend of mine, somebody that I knew, let me know of the open position, submitted my name for just consideration. She had worked there the year previously and knew that this was open. And that's how I got my very first role in human resources, was through it was not, a professional connection. It was simply a friend of mine that I knew that was in the HR field, pursuing her undergraduate. And that's what kicked off my entire career. I ended up being hired there. I ended up staying there for about 3 years before I moved into my next organization, where my direct report was a Rutgers HR individual, graduate. I'm still closely connected with him today. My third organization, the founders were all Rutgers graduates, 4 out of the 5 of them. I mean, the network that we have available here is massive. Additionally, I think that a lot of people are very open and supportive to helping people advance in their careers, helping people get those first jobs. I can tell you, I personally am incredibly responsive to anybody that reaches out, and a Rutgers connection is enough of a touch point for me to be more than happy to chat with somebody. And even my current position that I'm in now, I referred my direct report to this organization, and I'm now a boomerang back at the first organization that I was ever a part of. Because I stayed in touch with those folks, because my network continued to build, I was able to create those relationships during my tenure there. And now 6, 7 years later, I'm a boomerang employee back at that first organization. The chief talent officer is a Rutgers human resources individual. The network that is available through the HRM program and the Rutgers network really is something to take advantage of. Even if you may not have all the opportunities to make those connections easily in your day to day, just having that similarity with someone else can be enough to spark a conversation, or introduce yourself and kind of make things happen.
Great, thanks. Okay, this is for Sweta and Jason. So Sweta, what are some strategies that helped you adapt to your organization's culture and develop relationships?
I would say be incredibly curious from the onset. You have the biggest opportunity to have that curiosity and not know everything when you start a job at a new company. So taking advantage of that time period to ask the questions, observe and learn, I would say, is the most critical time to do. And it's the biggest opportunity to do so. I would say that I used to always ask my manager when my first job, who can I connect to? Who's going to help me? Who does work that's adjacent to mine? And also ask them, what could I do for them? What information could I share with the folks that I was talking to, so that it wasn't just one-sided, right? I was able to provide back and then really develop that bond. And then really leverage whatever company support or activities there were. So back at Nielsen, where I worked prior, joining those BRGs, those business resource groups, are also known in some instances as employee resource groups. So working with that on what brings us together is a very nice, simple way to connect with people, because you already have something in common. Definitely recommend looking at those employee resource groups. If there's early career network of some sort for folks that are just joining, that tends to be a really great way to meet folks that are, again, in that similar life stage or experience as you. So you can have people that are along that journey at the same time as you, and can share learnings and success stories, etc. I would say.
Great, Jason.
Yeah, when I actually started at Lucent, I worked at the corporate headquarters, and this is like Lucent Bell Laboratories, where they actually made a telephone and everything. And real, very much a research company, but had a lot of money, really booming area. They actually had a softball league, teams and stuff like that. So I joined one of the softball teams, and I know it's not as popular now that there's sports teams, but there's things that maybe people do to get together outside of work still. Of course we would go and go to the local watering hole, if you want to call it that, or bar, and hang out as employees together. And I had a lot of fun doing that, but that's not the things that really got me ahead. I would say the things that got me ahead is a couple key things. One, listening, right? I mean, everyone wants to do their best, but sometimes, especially when you're younger and you want to make a name for yourself, it could also be damaging though if you're not listening and you just want to participate. You learn so much from other people in that room when you listen and really take in what's being said, and then listen to how other people are reacting to that conversation. So that way you can learn by other people's answers, but then understand how to maybe position yourself at the right time. The other thing I would say is raise your hand, be assertive, and raise your hand for project work, right? So there's definitely resource groups like Sweta was saying, and other activities that are ways to connect. But from a career perspective within an organization, take the initiative and definitely raise your hand for projects that you definitely feel passionate about, but just opportunities to expose yourself to other people. Maybe it is a stretch to get on a project with a team that is more business minded, with not just so much HR minded, to be able to learn the organization, their value proposition, their products that they're offering, in a way to connect with other areas within the company, not just HR. So maybe it's a team that is cross-functional and has people from sales on it, or marketing, or finance, because it's a way for you to understand and make you a stronger HR practitioner. The best HR practitioners from a strategic standpoint are ones that understand how the business operates, okay, from all aspects. They're really someone that can understand the finances of the business, how the business works from a sales and marketing perspective, a procurement perspective, operations perspective. And you don't know that if you just stay in the HR bubble. So expose yourself to the full organization and develop relationships across the organization, not just in HR. And one of the best ways to do that, again, is through project work.
Great advice. So Liz, I'll pose this one to you. What are some boundaries that you establish to ensure work-life balance? So I know that's always an interesting topic to talk about, but to you, what does that mean? And what are some of the boundaries that you set for yourself?
Well, I think the first thing I utilize at work is my calendar. So number one thing is I block off my lunch, because that's my secret moment to de-stress, to, take my eyes off of the screen. I utilize my calendar to block off in the morning to go to the gym, because that's something that I enjoy doing. And in regards to, setting boundaries with other colleagues is just that, sharing with, hey, I go to the gym in the morning. So sharing that and having that respect for others as well, right? So if somebody is telling me that, they go pick up their kids around 3 o'clock, well, I just make sure that I'm also thinking of that for them. So just kind of like following following that for yourself, but for others as well. And then the other thing that I also do is apply that to my email signature. To be fair, I'm not a morning person. I sometimes do work a little bit later during the day, and I add that to my email signature saying, I work flexible hours. As long as, of course, your organization and your role really accepts that, I think that you can go ahead and say, I work flexible hours. Please don't be, don't feel like you have to respond when I send your email right away, right? So I think it's just a matter of just being open communication, and also having those conversations with your own manager. My manager is, I would say, really, really flexible. He himself, has to go pick up his kids, as well as he's a coach for his kids, like soccer and basketball and whatnot. So it's just a matter of having that communication and just sharing as well a little bit about what happens in your life outside of work.
Great. And I'll open the floor to the rest of the three of you. Is there anything you want to add for this? It looked like you
I would
did.
love to add something, which is it is totally okay to seek role clarity, because what can happen, especially what I find in the HR space, is your job can swell. We don't always have very clear, stop and starts of our position. So it can be very easy to start taking on responsibilities that are technically not part of your job. So something that we've really been pushing at my organization is using something called Rapid, which is a decision-making framework that came from Bain and Company. But there's different versions of that. You may have learned RACI at, through your curriculum at Rutgers. There's various versions of it. But seeking role clarity and making sure you are doing what is in scope for your position is going to help you save that time. 100% agree with the things that Liz had mentioned, utilizing that calendar to your best extent. I would also recommend challenging in some situations. In my last role at TR, I was focused actually on our hybrid work strategy. So really encouraging people to think about, are those meetings really critical that you have to be at? Are we connecting with your team to say, hey, how can we rethink the amount of time we're spending collaborating or on calls versus taking action and activating on stuff? So taking that onus to say, hey, I want to have clarity on my role, working with your manager and your collaborators on that, and challenging the status quo when it comes to the meetings that you have can help you get some of that time back.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, I mean, scope creep's definitely an issue, as Swetha just said. That's where you're, getting bigger and bigger your expectations. But there, I mean, as you move up, and I know we're talking with an audience here that's earlier on in their career, but as you move up in a career, scope creep and demands of the job definitely play a factor. I mean, again, working my last job, I had an organization of tens of thousands of people. An organization at one time was well over 200,000 and one of the biggest employers in the history of the country, in U.S. history. And, I had to set parameters because my work, I actually have been working remote for almost 10 years, well before COVID. But that's an evil within itself, because the computer's right there all the time. It always was there. And so the expectation for me to be responding to emails in a role that was a very senior level HR role was there. So you do have to set those boundaries for work-life balance to, make sure you're available to your family. I would always shut down and make sure I made dinner for my family. That was something that was me. I had to shut down, make sure I made dinner for my family. I spend time with my kids, and then I put them to bed. And then if I still had work to do after I put them to bed, fine, I'll go back on the computer for a couple hours till 10, 11 o'clock at night. But I made sure that I set, those were my hard parameters, that I shut down for those couple hours every day. But I did take the advantages of having a work-life balance, where I work from home. That, again, I have an in-ground pool. I loved in the summertime being able to jump out there, go swim for 50 laps, and then get back inside and jump on the computer. So to Liz's point, make sure that you're doing things that are not just good for your family, but healthy for yourself as well. So I made that work-life balance and that flexible work arrangement of working remotely work for me. And that was one of the reasons why I actually stayed at my employer for so long, and from that perspective. But again, there's definitely demands of jobs, travel thing that occurs, that you have to be able to make sure, like, well, if you did a lot of travel this week, then to Swetha's point, make sure there's understanding with your boss of, if I'm traveling 3 days this week, on the day that I'm not traveling, is it a down day for me? So understanding those things up front about, what's involved in your role will go a long way. Don't just assume, ask questions.
Great. Eric, do you want to say anything? Or would you like me to pose the next question to you?
Yeah, I can touch on this a little bit. I think one of the things I think is also important out here is to understand your company's culture. As Jason just touched on, he had a lot of flexibility in his organization, and that allowed him to have more flexibility in his day or working remotely. I've also benefited from that through my career, which I think is fantastic. I'm a huge proponent of that, where companies do that. Not every company is guaranteed to have that sort of level of flexibility. I know there's a lot of differences between in-office requirements. If you're in a client service type industry, it may be very strict based around your client expectations and client needs. But maybe there's flexibility in other areas. If you know that You're very strict when it comes to your midday meetings or meeting with clients that you have scheduled on a regular basis. Maybe there's flexibility for if you need time, as they mentioned, to drop off kids in the morning, or maybe that's the gym for you in the morning or something like that to start a little later. And then you make that up a little bit later in the day, or you find opportunities to do that otherwise. But I think it's important also just making sure that you're acknowledging what are the norms for your company and your organization, and making sure that you are in line with that to a degree as well, or meeting those expectations of the employer.
Yeah, I just want to touch one more point to Eric's point. Is like, yes, I've worked both sides. I've slept in my office overnight, right? When I was wearing a four walls environment at food distribution warehouse, it's a 24/7 operation. And as an HR business partner, I was there during the day, but guess what? The night shift was on and I had to do a benefits meeting. And then guess what? The drivers start making deliveries at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and I had to go make a benefits meeting. So what am I doing? I'm not going back home. I'm sleeping in my office in between those roles, those shifts. So, understanding what kind of workplace you're getting into and what the expectations of the job. Now, again, I'm putting in almost 24 hours straight doing my job as HR back, when I was working for that one company, U.S. Food Service it was. But the next day I'm taking a down day, right? So, but you have to understand what those job responsibilities are and what you're getting yourself into, just like Eric said, for sure.
All right, Liz, and then maybe Sweta, what are some common pitfalls that you would advise new HR labor relations professionals to avoid?
I think I'll start off, in regards to my experience mentoring others, students, right? The first thing is your resume, easy thing, right? Your resume reading like a job description, that's a big no-no. So I would say, focus on what are your accomplishments. What is it that you've done within your work experience or even your coursework? What are your accomplishments? Not for it to read like a job description, because absolutely, we're looking for an HR individual. We know what an HR individual is supposed to do, but what is it that you can bring into the organization, to the team, what have you? And I would say there's several times where I've talked to mentees where they don't utilize the experiences outside of school or even outside of work as a way to leverage their leadership skills, their communication skills, their project management skills. So for example, if you're in a fraternity or sorority, if you're in any type of organization outside of school, for example, maybe you are involved in church, utilize those experiences and connect it to what an HR business partner does. So building relationships, or an HR individual, I would say, or HR professional. So building relationships, are you working on projects? Are you organizing? Are you building something, or what is the strategy behind this particular project or program, what have you? So I would just, really say that, focus on what your accomplishments are, rather than just, having your resume read like a job description. And then the other thing I would say is utilizing your strengths. Once you're in that role, utilize your strengths, and figure out what your strengths are. So for example, I myself in particular, I am really good at Excel. It's not something that an HR business partner uses very often, but whenever there's an Excel project that comes up or a data analysis project that comes up, I'm the first one that's thought of within my team because, I enjoy it. It's something that's my strength. So I am thought of as somebody that can lead that project. So I would also figure out what are your strengths, and what is it that you enjoy doing within that particular role.
I was writing in the chat.
You mind if I jump in on that one real fast?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So I would just, the key word in that last one was professional to me. And as a newcomer, I went into an organization and I had a lot of fun, right? I was in recruiting, we were traveling, and the recruiters partied. We'd go out to bars. Some of those recruiters had fraternized with each other and had personal relationships that were not professional. And they probably made a bad name for themselves and a bad image. So, those are some pitfalls. I think of pitfalls and things that really could damage you. Having personal relationships at a workplace and you are an HR professional could be very damaging as a pitfall. The other thing I would just say is kind of what I said earlier is listening. And then to what Sweta said, you want to make sure that you're listening and not just acting on what you feel all the time. And then what the Sweta says is don't keep things in, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't just, you're new, all right? You're not expected to know it all. So don't think that it would be bad for you to ask questions. So if you're unsure of how to answer stuff or what to do on a project, don't just try it. Ask the question, seek out a mentor to help you along those. So those are a couple of pitfalls that I would just point out on as a newbie to the field.
Jacqueline, I'd be happy to add a little something to this
Sure.
too, which is when I used to come back to Rutgers actually to recruit for my last employer, I would ask students, why are you coming to HR? And they would oftentimes say, because I like people. And I would say, I regret to inform you that is not the full extent of the job. The number of times, to Liz's point, I mean, I cannot tell you the amount of pretty advanced analytics I've had to do from a people analytics perspective. When I've done workforce planning exercises to understand, the direction of the workforce, the number of times I've had to do things like exit people from the organization, right? These are things where you might like people, but you've got other skills that have to apply where, yes, liking people is helpful, but it's not the most valuable skill or capability to do the job well. There's a huge component around strategic mindset. There's a huge component around data analysis, both quantitative and qualitative. There's earning your seat at the table, or getting basically being sales sometimes, right? Convincing leaders to take on a new HR initiative that it's worth the cost, for example. There's so much more to the HR space than just being about the people. It's important to keep that in mind and really think about that full-fledged list of skills that you're going to be required to leverage, and don't shy away from those things as you're picking your what classes you're enrolling in, I would say.
Okay, great.
I could
Thank
build
you.
on that, just also in that same rent. You talk about how many different skill sets there are, and I think that, and even from hearing the backgrounds of the different speakers, there's such a wide variety of opportunities within the human resources field. We hear Sweta talking about people analytics and data analytics. We're talking about different generalist functions, recruiting functions, benefits, operations. There's so many different things that you can get into and learn about and work on. I would recommend that people don't jump into specializing in one very specific function unless you are absolutely sure that that's where your heart is set and you want to be in that forever. There are so many different areas and focus areas for human resources. It's very easy early on in your career to try out a lot of different things and try different areas of human resources and learn more about those different functions. As you start to specialize, it can be a little bit more difficult for you to make those very large transitions. Not saying it's impossible, but getting those skill sets early on, getting early exposure to different functional areas of human resources, I think can definitely help you out down the road as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a couple questions in the chat, so I will pose this question. It's 8:12 right now to all of you. And then I'll pose one question to one person each from the chat. Does that sound okay in terms of timing? So what are some strategies that helped you learn your role and your organization's focus when you entered a new industry? So if you want to speak directly to the first role that you had once you graduated with your undergrad or master's, that's fine. But those of you that have transitioned in roles before, how have you learned that role? And you've already talked about the scope changing over time, but what are some strategies that you have for people if they're entering a new industry or a role? Jason, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Any role, honestly, any role that you go into, even roles like nowadays when I go and look at roles, when you get into it, learn the business, learn what you are supporting. Okay, whether it's a ride along, some sort of job shadowing of that business. Even as a recruiter, understand what you're recruiting for. As a business partner, understand what type of employee population you're supporting as a comp or benefits person. Understand what you're, who you're supporting, because that will only make you a stronger HR business partner. So understanding what role you are supporting or what organization they're supporting, what product are they selling? How do they make the product? What service are they providing? How's that service derived? What's the benefit of that service? So again, don't just stay within human resources, but understand how your decisions and the things that you're pushing or the things that you're trying to sell as HR initiatives are going to impact those people in their lives, both in and outside of work. So that's the biggest thing that I've always looked at, no matter where I've been in my career, from the first job I've ever had all the way to the most recent job ever.
Just chime in for this one.
So I guess I'll go next. I'm actually in that particular situation now, where in the past 3-4 years I've supported our G&A groups, which is finance, facilities. I've supported some of our HR operations team with any HR related or HR business partner matters. And recently I had the opportunity to support our US commercial team, which is, the commercial team is, selling our drugs. So one of the most important things I have to do within this role is dive deeper into our products. So as Jason said, learn the business, learn what's going on within that commercial organization, what drives them, what motivates them. And of course, it's also about our patients, right? So learning how our patients affect, the motivation within that US commercial team. So some of the things that I do whenever I'm through building a relationship with a new client group is, number one, setting meetings with those leaders, just to understand, what are some of their pain points? What are some of the things that perhaps HR can do differently? What are some of the things that they're currently working on? What is something that I can immediately start working on for them? As well as I always ask, can I sit in your meetings so I can understand? At first, don't get me wrong, I don't understand half of the things that they're saying because I'm learning as I'm going. But sitting in those meetings, I start picking up what is going on within the business. And recently there was a meeting, recently there was an email that was sent out by one of our leaders. I did not understand what that email was about. So I set up some time with him. Can you please explain to me what this means? And he was happy to explain. He was very, very happy to provide me with that very, 30-minute lesson on what sales distribution really means in his role. So within doing that, I'm not only building that relationship with him, but I'm also building my business acumen. And I would also encourage you all to, like, if you can, right, sit in talent reviews or recruiting strategy meetings so you can learn the roles as well as the people within your organization. Even if you're not an HR business partner currently, just say, hey, I'm curious, I want to learn. Can I sit in these meetings? So yes.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. So there are 3 questions in the chat that I see right now. We have a little over 10 minutes. The first one is, what are the best ways to distinguish yourself when starting a new job? Sweta, would you like to tackle that one?
Sure. If someone has a more immediate answer, feel free to go right away, because I appreciate we're
Yes,
low on
you don't know this
time.
one. I'm throwing you on the spot.
Um,
Okay, so I can pose it a different way too if you want to think about it. How about I read all 3 questions and you guys can think about it for a minute because you don't know these ones. So the first question in the chat is, what are the best ways to distinguish yourself when you start a new job? The second one is, can you share a memorable experience from your career that had a lasting impact on you? And the third is, what made you stand out when you answer the question, why this company, during an interview? So like, why are you interested in working for our organization? What kind of answer did you have that made you stand out? I'll put them in the chat too, so they're easy to see.
So I will say for that first one that we talked about, honestly, deliver. Deliver on your role and responsibilities to gain that credibility and trust within the organization that you are someone that is reliable and responsible and can be trusted to complete tasks. That I think more than anything is what set me up as someone that, you know, people wanted on their team in the next rotations right after I did my first rotation. And using my status as someone that was new in the organization to challenge, right? To say, hey, why do we do things like that? Hey, you know, taking the time to do the external research to say, hey, this is what I've learned externally, and here's how I think, you know, here, you know, just trying to educate myself and educate the people, as well as being just kind of proactive in nature. When I was in my second rotation at the organization, I noticed that people were feeling kind of a gap in experience with just feeling connected. I drummed up money by talking to different finance partners, talking to different folks, and just said, I'm going to throw out an event at Governor's Island, and we're going to get people out of the office and getting them connected. And I was known after that as the Summerfest woman, and people at the organization were just knew me and helped me build my network. And it's one of the fondest memories that I have from my time at Nielsen as a result of that. So delivering and building those connections and trying to fill gaps where you see them based on, you know, the feedback that you're hearing, I would say.
Okay, great. Thanks. Anyone else want to talk about, I feel like that talked about distinguishing yourself, but also that seemed like a memorable experience. So does anyone else have a memorable or a turning point, a cornerstone part of your career, a story that you told again in an interview, or something that you feel you've developed a skill by putting, you know, a deliverable product together for a client, or an event that you coordinated that's really been pivotal in your career?
I could touch on this to agree with talking about a memorable experience. I think it kind of ties into distinguishing yourself as well. So when I was in my first organization, I was probably about 3 years in. We're a pretty small knit team where I reported into a senior generalist. It was me, and then we had a separate team for learning and development, but pretty small kind of group overall. After about 3 years, my senior generalist, who I was reporting into, decided that she was ready for her next opportunity. And she left the company after being there like 6, 7 years, the only person in her role specifically. And I was fairly green at the time. With that, the head of HR overall came to us and asked if I felt that I was ready to take on this role, or if that they felt that they needed to bring somebody in. Granted, she was much more senior to me at that time. We're a small team. I worked very closely with her for 3 years directly and kind of knew all the ins and outs. And one of the things I think that made me stand out, and the reason I was given that opportunity in the first place, is because I did everything I could to understand the role and to prepare myself for that sort of opportunity. Making sure you're learning how things work, making sure you're learning who all your key contacts are, the people you need to work with, understanding how things function, understanding how your role plays into the bigger picture of the team or the department or the business organization or goals. It's important to just do everything you can to continue learning, continue growing. And that way, when it's your time for that next big opportunity, you'll be prepared to move into that. That was a big jump for me at that point in time. It definitely helped propel my career forward. And if I wasn't prepared at that point in time, if I needed somebody else to come in, it would have been much longer before I was able to step into a generalist type role. I was given my first direct report at that time after 2.5 years of working. So it was a big, memorable moment and kind of career shift for me, because I had prepared well, because I understood the role and then our team's, focus areas. So making sure you're prepared and you're always learning is critical.
Okay, great. There's 4 more questions and we have about 8 minutes, so we can be concise in answering them. Hopefully we can answer everyone's question. Liz, so there's a question about, what do you find rewarding in your current role? What pressures do you face in current role? And then maybe those two you could sort of combine in terms of like something's been challenging but rewarding in the sense in your career.
So there are definitely a lot of challenges, especially as an HR business partner. It's not necessarily how to get something from starting the process to the end of the process. Is really managing those relationships. Everywhere you go, regardless of a family, an organization, a church organization, you're going to find politics. So I would say that's one of the challenges there, is just being aware enough of those relationships, and perhaps just being extra careful of what you may not know, because you are at a certain role. There may be some challenges on how those relationships are within executive levels, and then you are, perhaps at a senior manager or an associate director, what have you, role. You may not know everything that happens at the very top. So just being able to manage those relationships is one of the things that I find most stressful in my role right now. And the way that I handle that, I did see somebody else write a question on how to handle that stress. It's having a mentor, especially a mentor within HR. I have a mentor that she's a VP of HR in our EMEA office, and I can talk to her and I can say, well, this happened with this particular person. How do you think I should manage this particular situation with that person? So just having a sounding board with somebody that is within your own profession can really save you from, like, I guess the edge, right? Or the ledge. Just having those opportunities, as well as having a mentor outside of work, where perhaps they can give you a different perspective. And I also would encourage somebody within HR, because a lot of times people that are not in HR do not understand some of the nuances that we have to go through, especially because it's such a confidential type of role. So I would say those are some of the things that, I kind of have to go through.
I was made it to the mentorship list because I completely agree with them. I had Rutgers students come on to my staff meetings unpaid, just to learn what it is to be in HR. That's one of the things that drew me back into Rutgers as an alumni, to come and do things like this, is because I want to be a mentor, right, within HR. I want to help the next generation of professional HRs in the field, and there was a way for me to give back. It doesn't have to be a paid internship to be able to give back. It could be just seeking out people, and it doesn't have to be someone that's, in your same company. It could be, again, through a LinkedIn connection, through a connection that you make through the Alumni Association or a professional association that was put in the commentary. One of the most memorable experiences I had actually was a negative experience. I was working in a warehouse in between semesters, and I was painting rails, yellow safety rails. And then, a woman came out of the office in the warehouse, food distribution warehouse, and yelled at me, why are you painting that? You're not supposed to paint that. Don't paint that. I'm like, and I'm thinking, only if she knew that my father was the HR manager of this warehouse. And this is back in the mid 90s when this happened. But you know what? It stuck with me. It stuck with me that I said, as an HR professional, when I get older, or as, in my career, I will never treat anyone like that, ever. I will treat everybody within the company with the utmost respect. And that's been one of my biggest skill sets in my career, is being able to connect with people, from the person that is, a porter or someone cleaning, picking up the garbage, all the way up to senior executives. And I've been in weekly meetings with, billionaires like Eddie Lampert weekly, and so I've had the exposure with people from all aspects of, of income, of ethnicity, and everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. And that's my guiding principle when it comes to my management philosophy, is the golden rule. So, again, I took a negative situation. It's not always a positive situation that might be long and lasting and impactful to you. It might actually be a negative situation. In my standpoint, that's what it was. I turned a negative into a positive, and used that in my HR practices all throughout my career. So, and I'll keep on trying to answer as many questions as I can in here. But yeah, I put my LinkedIn link there for my profile. Get in touch, but yeah, mentorships, 100%, Liz, 100%.
And something that I'll add in regards to just what makes it all just amazing to be an HR professional is when you see somebody grow within their career. I think that's just the most amazing thing to experience, especially you as an HR professional that perhaps was there for them in a moment of stress or a moment of where they needed guidance. or even if they don't know it in the back of everything in the background, right? You're really helping them through their career, right? Even if they don't know what everything is happening. I think that's the most I don't know, amazing thing to experience is when somebody, regardless of where they are within their career, that you as a professional are helping them get to where they want to go. So I say that would be another thing to keep in mind.
Great. Well, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. It's 8:29. Does anyone have any pressing? Len, I know you are also a Rutgers alum. Is there anything you would like to share?
No, Jack, I don't like to make things about me. But no, I just put it in the chat because I wasn't sure what I'm going to say, but I so appreciate and I hope the students recognize the value of these types of events, getting to hear from four people, kind of unfiltered and just putting it all out there for you. And, the key themes, the networking, mentoring, I hope you take advantage of those opportunities. They put their LinkedIn profiles in. I hope you will connect. They're all great. And I'm just so thankful. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, Len, Jacqueline have been amazing to work with. I've kept in touch with Amy Marcato since I was there 20 some years ago. These are people that have dedicated themselves to not just students, but throughout our careers to staying connected. An amazing school that we have all attended and had the pleasure of staying connected with and partnering with. So, and that's what brought me back to it. Just amazing.
Cool connection. I just saw that one in the chat too. Made
That's
Len
great.
smile.
Forgot about that. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I do encourage you all to reach out to the panelists on LinkedIn. As I said, it's just the beginning, creating connections, and it can be very intimidating. I'm happy to meet with you and kind of coach you through that process too. All of them are very friendly here. This is a good starting point. But I will, as I said, I already recorded that session. I will share details. I tried to save the chat too, because I know there was a lot of comments in there and I can send it out to those of you that at least have registered on Handshake, because I'll have your email address. If not, I emailed or I chatted most of you, but I'm going to put my email address in the chat. And if you want to save it quickly, you can send me an email. If you want the chat and or the clip, we're going to be posting it and sending it out as well from the SMLR Career Services website. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Especially thank you, panelists. Thank you so much for engaging with us. We greatly appreciate it, and we will keep you in mind for future events. And Len, thanks for joining us too.
Of course. Thank you, Jacqueline. Great job.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Bye.